today's about businesses and Bitcoin, and I thought it was really interesting to bring three very different types of businesses, because for me, it was always, oh, Bitcoin must only be relevant to really technical people or what have you, whereas actually I think it can be, on today's topic, competitive advantage for different businesses. So we've got three different ones here. So we'll just start with you, Fahim, and then go down the line, just who you are, what business you're involved with.
Yeah, afternoon, everyone. My name's Fahim. I'm a GP partner. I'm also director of a private healthcare company called Northern Health. So we've got three main arms to our business. The first is we help accident emergencies streamline their care by operating urgent treatment centres. So we take care of the doctors, we look at operational pathways, how to streamline processes in order to reduce A&E waiting times. The second part of our business, which we're working on, is called My Doctor, which is a private direct-to-consumer healthcare business which uses AI and personalised insights to better manage your health. And the third pillar of our business is we, as of this year, January, placed Bitcoin on our balance sheet as a strategic reserve asset. We believe at Northern Health that Bitcoin is going to be the rails for a new financial system, and we believe that small and medium enterprises can really benefit from the growth that Bitcoin can give going forward.
Marvellous. Excellent. So we've got doctors. Over to you, Jonathan.
Hi there. So I run Catalyst AI, which is an automation and AI consultancy. We help small and medium enterprises really streamline their operations. So help streamline the processes, the Excel, the PDFs, emails, all those things that people tend to waste their time on. We come in and actually automate a lot of that. So we help save businesses that time. And then generally, as it helped with Jez, we put those same people into revenue-generating operations. So now they're actually more free to work with the clients that they know and actually bring money into the business. And then free, obviously, to put that into capital, put it into the business, or put it into Bitcoin. And then also on the AI and custom software side, to go after new opportunities. So the automation saves time doing what you already do, and the AI helps you chase those new opportunities.
Super, thank you. And we'll come back to our sort of working relationship that we had earlier this year. Over to you, Neil, my friend.
Good afternoon, Neil McCann. I'm the owner and founder of McCann Bespoke. We're established in 2003, and we make everything from suits, shirts, overcoats, all the way down to shoes and even shorts. And we either make them by hand, or we make them by machine, which has different price points. We have a very experiential store in the City of London in Lime Street, so right in the middle of the city. Our customers would be international business people, insurance, banking, all the way down to entrepreneurs. And in our time, we've done a lot of work in the sports industry as well, all the way from Leicester City, the year that they won the Premiership, and beyond that, we worked with Celtic, Stoke, QPR, when they got into the Premiership as well. And on that basis, we met some fantastic people along the way. And we also have been developing over the last 5 years more of a sort of an e-commerce type of business that we hope to roll out in the next sort of 6 months to a year.
Mate, and just back, did you start your business? Because now, I mean, and Neil is very, very humble. If you actually look at his LinkedIn of who he does produce garments for, it is quite an illustrious group of people. Did I hear a story that you actually started it by essentially knocking on doors in the city?
Yeah, I did. Well, when I graduated from university, I was at Reading and I did a banking and management degree, and realised that I was not that employable, to be honest. So I worked for a bank for a while, and this didn't really float my boat. I was like, I'm not getting any inspiration from anyone. So I went travelling for a year, which changed my perception on things. And I came back and I thought I'll go and sell some suits door to door in the City of London. And I liked it. I really liked the product. I just didn't like some of the people I worked with within that business. And so I then got approached to set up a business for an American company. Didn't quite work out, mainly on trust issues. So yeah, I set up the business in 2003 from a garage in Balham. And obviously at that time I had no idea where it was going to go. And yeah, the first couple of years was pretty hard because, you know, knocking on doors in the city of London mainly. And that was quite a humbling experience in itself, but in effect, it actually set me up for where we are now. But in answer to your question, that was the start.
I think some of your existing clients were probably some of your first.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, throughout the years, you don't keep in contact with all of your clients. One reason is time, but it's quite a funny story. Only about a month ago, one of our clients I've been dealing with for 23 years came into the store, and he said, "Oh, I want you to make my son's wedding suit." And I was like, I remember when he was like 5 or 7, so I was like, this is a bit weird. And when he came in, he was wearing a jacket, and I said, "There's a lovely jacket you're wearing there. It's pink and it's velvet." He said, "Yeah, you made it for me," and it was 20 years old. His name was Jonathan Angel. He was a partner in he's a partner in Bird and Bird, but he sort of moved around a lot in the corporate finance world. So yeah.
So I can sort of, you know, back to the Bitcoin side of things, and I'll move to you, Fahim, if you don't mind. Is you can sort of, you know, someone like Neil, self-made, entrepreneurial, you can sort of see the Bitcoin fit. Jonathan, AI, understands tech, again, sort of newish startup business. And then you go to doctors. Because I imagine if you're going to look on a sort of chart of conservative businesses, you'd be right up there.
Yeah, I've got the quarter zip on in honor of that as well. And I was actually speaking to someone prior, Scott, shout out to Scott if he's still here. He asked me who I was, and I said GP, and I said, "You must be the only doctor in the UK that understands Bitcoin." My story is quite an interesting one. I was sat outside a kebab shop with my dad, and he said to me, "I've heard about this thing called Ethereum, and it's gone from £1 to £7 in the space of like 4 months." So I looked it up and I said, "This looks interesting." So my first purchase was not actually Bitcoin, it was Ethereum. So shame there. Went through the crash of 2017, 2018, and then started to really understand Bitcoin from a foundational level. So my background, I'm not just one of these doctors who just reads into medicine and medical textbooks all day. I've always had an interest in kind of finance, geopolitics, game theory, kind of economic systems, how things work. And I quickly came to the understanding that Bitcoin was the solution that we've been looking for, and the actual problem was actually the fiscal irresponsibility of governments in printing a money that is not backed by anything. So with the zero cost of production, you can produce the money, and therefore everything crashes down in value. Money crashes down in value rather than assets going up in value. So viewing things from the upside down perspective. Me and a few of my partners actually had a meeting earlier this year. So when we decided to put it on our balance sheet, we had a large cash position, and we said, well, what we're going to do with the cash that's on our balance sheet is sitting there. And I used the phrase melting ice cube. And one of the directors looked at me as though he knew what that meant. And at that point, I realized he'd watched a Michael Saylor video. And we asked each other, there were 4 of us in the room, and we said, "Have you guys heard of Bitcoin?" Every single one of them said, "Yes, we've been holding it for the last 4 years." So it was almost like that Spider-Man meme where everyone's pointing at each other. And then you realize that actually, okay, why don't we just put it on our balance sheet? So the process for us was quite straightforward. It was just a case of having a meeting, making sure that we had the right kind of provisions and risk written into our meeting, and that we just placed it on the balance sheet.
And this is, I mean, I think it was your podcast with Jordan a few months ago. I mean, this is, you know, a really long-term play and vision for you, and then you hope with the appreciation over the longer term to be able to do a hell of a lot more with your day-to-day business, correct?
Yeah, so I think the problem that's faced by healthcare systems, especially nowadays, I think, again, when you hear politicians talk about what's wrong with the healthcare systems, we'll just put more money in, we need more managers, we need to create more efficient systems, and you realize the problem is beyond that. So if anyone's seen Men in Black, hands up if anyone's seen Men in Black, the movie from a long time ago, there's a scene in that at the end where the bell on the cat's collar is a galaxy, and they zoom out and they realize that actually there's a living world inside there. It's almost as though the living world that everyone else is in the current system, and we're looking at everything from the outside in, thinking the problem is the money, right? So the one thing that we have realized is we're in a fortunate position where, because we are not publicly funded. Because we're a private business, we're in a different position than NHS hospital trusts. Most NHS hospital trusts are in a deficit where they can't even cover the cost of their expenses. So there's a large deficit and shortfall there that the government has to continue to fund. So they will look for solutions that will increase their productivity. So they look at a company like ours who can take burden away from A&E, and by purely doing that, we can reduce their costs. As long as we're providing a profitable business for them, we are cash flow positive. So the question we have is then, in order to expand, how can we make ourselves grow faster than our competition? So one way in which I looked at it, and there was a speech, I think it was from Van Eck at one of the recent Bitcoin conferences earlier in the year, was if you're looking at your business and you're thinking of expanding, if you use Bitcoin as a measuring stick by which you should kind of judge whether to expand or not against, you look at Bitcoin's historic return on capital, ROIC, or the growth, or the compound annual growth rate, and you project going forward what you suspect the growth rate might be. So earlier in the hypergrowth phase, it's been 50 to 55% a year, but over the next kind of 10 to 20 years, you can reasonably assume that will be slightly lower, maybe 30, going down to 20%. So the question you have to ask yourself as a business owner is the money that I'm putting in to expand my operations or do new ventures reliably going to, with minimal risk, gain me 20 to 30% a year or not? And if the answer to that is no, a simple solution is placing Bitcoin on your balance sheet for the long term, because it will grow faster than organic business expansion would.
The world is changing fast, and your business is no exception. How you save, plan, and protect your future is shifting, and standing still now means falling behind. This is the reason we are launching the UK's first Bitcoin business network, and it exists to help UK businesses protect what they've built and turn Bitcoin into a genuine competitive advantage. It's a place for founders, entrepreneurs, and executives to share what's working, learn from people actually doing it, and help drive positive change across the UK. So if you are a business owner or an entrepreneur, hit the link down below to join the network and help shape the future of Bitcoin in the UK. Okay, let's get back to the video.
Amazing. So you've got Neil, who you can get suits from. Fahim, if you've got a really bad cold, see him afterwards. And then Jonathan. Now, I can't remember how we met. It was one of us on LinkedIn pinging the other one, wasn't it?
I think it was actually a job that you were involved with, delivery, food, and Bitcoin,
right.
and I could get paid in Bitcoin. So I thought, let me have a chat.
So I decided to try and recruit. I'm in sales and marketing, very boring, not even worth a minute of anyone's time. But still, and I put an advert out, and I thought, I'm fed up with these platforms. Let's put it out on X. And then Jonathan replied, not very interested in the job, but we got chatting. And he then started saying, well, I'm just setting up Catalyst AI. Now, me being an absolute technical retard, I'd heard loads of things about AI, how important it was. However, I don't know the first thing about it. So Jonathan and I had a chat. I said, look, you don't live a million miles away. Come to the office and sit down with our head of data, because we deal with a lot of data. And you spent probably half a day initially, correct?
Yeah, it was about that, chatting to Emma. She was very good, actually giving me her time to tell me about the processes that she was actually doing. And there's a lot that goes into it. So it was taking up a lot of her time.
Yeah, so we were then looking at going, okay, well, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. Because he's a fellow Bitcoiner, I have a trust level with him. I'm not going to see any other AI company. And then we, I guess, contracted your services for a period of time. And for a business that is very non-technical but deals with data, I have to say the results that he produced were unbelievable. So much so now that I think your sort of 3-month pilot with us that then you implemented within the business has saved about 70 to 80 working hours of people per week in the back end. As a result of that, I have repositioned 2.5 staff into revenue generating roles, and it's just spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. And actually, you could also look at it and make an argument if you were really this boring and wanted to look at it and go, the revenue generation, then allows me to ultimately increase the percentage allocation into Bitcoin each week. And I think we're probably slightly different, is the fact that I as a business cannot benefit from accepting Bitcoin payments within my industry. In fact, it would probably lose me clients. You're probably the same, that I've got a cold, right, great, discount with Lightning. Oh, okay, that's not going to happen, especially in Yorkshire. However, you guys are different, and we've spoken about this, Neil, haven't we? And I guess you've had, off the back of becoming Bitcoin friendly, should I say, in terms of payments, you've had some orders from people already through. We need to chat after this. There's someone else in here who needs to speak to you, so there might be a really nice one.
Perfect.
But you two guys, I guess, could more integrate with the community, not just nationally, but even probably internationally, that there's people in the US who would love your product, for example. And I guess that's the other side to it, of integrating some sort of Bitcoin payments, whether people pay in Bitcoin or not. It just opens you up to a wider group.
It does, and it's such a nice signal to put out there. I think that's what probably brought all of us here, is that we can just see straight away there's something in common, some general level of understanding and trust. Let's at least have the conversation and kind of take it from there, because there's a whole group of people who you don't even understand or would think are actually Bitcoiners, and having that little thing in common can actually bring people together quite nicely.
Yeah, I mean, if I may add to that, I would say from our business, which is a fairly traditional type of business, that people aren't particularly forward thinking. I believe that we are, and we're trying to be more so. It is an absolute way to get a competitive advantage against others in our industry who are sort of bastions, have been around for even longer than we have. And on that same token, it also opens the doors to have exposure to a community, whereas before we just wouldn't have gone in that direction. And the other thing I would say is, by being exposed to the Bitcoin community, whether it's through the Bitcoin Collective or other means, it's absolutely opened up my eyes to another world that is out there as well. And it's only just the beginning, I believe, of the path that we're on by way of Bitcoin. But it isn't just about the accumulation of customers, it's about accumulation of knowledge and what we can do with that knowledge.
I think, every business now, we all know it. And I would say that I think you've got to consider a Bitcoin strategy. You've got to be a reasonably successful business. This is not going to take a dreadful business and make it an okay one. But we, I guess, as a group, there's enough challenges being businesses based in the UK right now. And if this can give us an edge, be it 1, 2, 3, 5, 10%, then, that's important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, especially when you're looking at businesses in terms of the question I always ask is, what are you doing with the cash that's on your balance sheet, and what is your plan moving forward? Because the corporate world is different to the personal world. The personal Bitcoin that I hold, the plan is you never sell it, right? You hold it forever. You think it's the best form of money. But when you're a corporate, you have to think in a slightly different way, which, okay, blasphemy, but you have to think about, at what point am I going to sell the Bitcoin? At what point am I going to use it to reinvest in the business? At what point am I going to use it to generate cash flow positive activities that will outperform Bitcoin, if that makes sense? So what the basis of holding Bitcoin gives you as a strategy, purely from a treasury perspective, because you're right, payments is not something that we'd accept. Hospitals would look at us funny if we asked for Bitcoin. They'd probably, rip up our contracts. But it's one of these where you look at the Bitcoin on the balance sheet and think the growth in that balance sheet can then fund future activities. So, for example, if you want to go for another hospital contract and you want to hire a consultant to manage that process, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to kind of hire a few staff members, if you want to use AI in your business, for example, if provided you have enough cash flow, you can do that sensibly. The other thing I wanted to add was the element of, when you've got Bitcoin on your balance sheet, how you mitigate risk, because you've mentioned it, and it's really important. Having Bitcoin on your balance sheet only really works if you have a company that's generating revenue, and you can actually segment the Bitcoin on the balance sheet from your day-to-day operations, because it makes no sense to have to rely on the appreciation of Bitcoin to pay your wage bills. Bitcoin is volatile. We all know that there can be, with limited data, 3 or 4 year cycles, which over time may well decouple from that. So we actually understand that you have to be able to hold the Bitcoin long enough and put the right provisions for risk in place in order to revisit your position at certain times and segment it as just a separate pillar of the business that's separate to the other areas.
And I think, to get started with this, it's really easy. And I think if you're a business out there who's considering it and say, a very simple structure with a MD or a couple of partners, bit like our businesses where we can make quick decisions, not like we're in Derby, Rolls Royce. It's a bigger discussion. They can't just go and open a CoinCorner account tomorrow morning. But you could, as a business owner, open a CoinCorner account. And I think the key with that, and this is something, if you are a business owner, is, and it's not necessarily just down to hostility, but someone mentioned it before. If you try and say, send money from your business to Coinbase today, that's a red flag, and the bank may cause you an issue. However, what CoinCorner have been really clever with is you set up an account with them, a business account or a personal account, and they both come with e-money accounts. So you get a sort code, account number, and either your personal name or your business name. So what then happens is you simply take the money from your business current account, irrespective of the actions of your bank. So, for example, there are certain challenger banks who literally say zero money is allowed to go from this account to a crypto exchange. Some other banks have certain weekly or monthly maximums. What you can do now is you can send as much or as little whenever you like from your business day-to-day account to your business e-money account with CoinCorner and then instantly purchase Bitcoin. And then that's all backed up by statements for year ends, etc. And that is a really simple way to start it off. And I think the other thing, I had someone the other day going, yeah, but what if the price crashes and I've put 100% of my business wealth into Bitcoin? I go, well, if you put 100% of wealth of your business wealth into Bitcoin, you're an idiot. That this is a longer term accumulation strategy. And we did a presentation last week showing the power of buying the same amount, sterling amount of Bitcoin each week and using that volatility to produce outsized returns. And it's bizarre that, that's why when price drops like over the last couple of weeks, you see these mad Bitcoiners with big smiles on their faces, whereas everyone's texting you going, are you all right? And actually, because you are getting more Bitcoin for that weekly sterling amount. So that was just a point. Anything you guys have got to, I've really enjoyed having you here, and thanks for coming for Derby. Anything you guys want to put in to finish off?
I don't know why I've got the microphone. It's good. I'll talk.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, because I can. I would say, so from a personal perspective in terms of the journey, Jez and I met in January. We hosted an event in the store with Matt Pryor, former England wicketkeeper, and Tim Bresnan. And Tim is into Bitcoin. So we happened to meet on that basis. And it was a beautiful moment, really, because it was the first sort of insight that I ever had into Bitcoin. And Brezzy was saying you should get some, just buy some every now and again. And then Jeremy and I were talking, and he was like, well, you should just take payment in Bitcoin. I was like, how'd you do that? He said, well, CoinCorner. I was like, oh, wonderful. And then I soon began to realize it's part of this bigger ecosystem, CoinCorner, Bitcoin. I've been introduced to Bitcoin Treasury companies and other things as well. But if it hadn't been on that journey, number one, we wouldn't have been exposed to some of the people we've been exposed to, and hopefully continue to be exposed to. But it's just it seems to me that it's a bit of a hidden gem that not a lot of people are alive to or even know about.
And without that meeting, I wouldn't have had this brown jacket. Anyway, gents, thanks very much.